Welcome. Let's get right into it. A lot of people think Jesus was the first dude to get crucified and resurrected and all this stuff, and turns out he's not. There's a few cases before Jesus, so we're going to start with Odin. Odin is known as the hung god. He sacrificed himself to himself for a greater sense of knowledge. He stabbed himself to make sure he would die, and then stared into dark waters for 9 days. Some sources say he was resurrected by magic. Other sources say he won't actually return till after Ragnarok. If the sources that say he was, brought back by magic are right, he did gain his knowledge and, I guess, charms. He kind of figured out these runes, like what the runes actually meant. That's interesting because his whole goal was something with the runes. And Enki, the god who supposedly created us Anunnaki-wise, created the Tower of Babel to give us language and whatnot. And supposedly he invented runes as well. And that's something that was handed down in the Tower of Babel. So if Odin is Enki, it makes sense that he's trying to work on this written language. Do keep in mind, though, the whole Odin being stabbed by a spear specifically. That goes along with something else we're going to talk about. And some depictions do show him, like hanging as if he was on like a cross, but really he's just hung over a tree, both arms on branches. So anyways, besides Odin, there is the tale of Osiris, who some people, especially in secret societies, believe that Jesus' account of death and resurrection is actually based off of originally is Osiris and his resurrection story in the Book of the Dead. Now, Osiris, again, is connected to Enki. You can listen to this in our other podcast, too, where we talk and connect Enki and Osiris. So I'm not going to get super into it, but they are connected. And Osiris, his brother Set, who I believe is kind of a symbol for Enlil. So Enlil is Set and Enki is Osiris. Set kills Osiris just for this power. Basically, he wants, to take over Egypt or to be the king and all this stuff. And he cuts Osiris in the different parts, spreads his body all over. The priestesses, or a priestess, goes and gathers up the pieces of his body, puts him back together. Except, weirdly enough, they can't find his penis. They said it was eaten by fish or shark or something when it was thrown into a lake or an ocean or something. So they replace his penis with a gold bar. Now that also will come into play later. We'll get into that. Resurrected through magic. Again, keep that in mind too. A priestess and magic. That also plays a part in some of the shit we're going to talk about. So he comes back to life, but Set and people like followers of Set were still upset with Osiris, so they still were after him. So he had to escape. He left. He left Egypt. And he went to South America, where Quetzalcoatl is Osiris, who is Enki. So Quetzalcoatl is another version of this character Enki that we know from Sumerian texts. He then went to South America to help, the Aztecs and all those cultures kind of learn some stuff when it comes to agriculture and stuff. He even taught them, as Quetzalcoatl, not to eat meat. He was a vegetarian himself, and he taught them all these good morals. So like Enki, Quetzalcoatl is all about his people, showing them good morals and values and how to do crops and not sacrifice each other, because he was a moral god and didn't believe in murder. He thought murder was wrong and stuff. So in South America, things were going pretty well. And again, another connection that you can make with Quetzalcoatl and Enki is the Sumerian shit that you find in like Peru and whatnot. You find these pots and these lettering and stuff, like Sanskrit lettering, that should only be in Mesopotamia or like the Iraq area, but for some reason are in South America. So that's because of Enki coming to South America, becoming Quetzalcoatl and showing them this stuff. That was remnants of him and his Sumerian people going to South America. Again, running away from Enlil, or as we know, Egypt-wise as Set. But eventually, Set, or this Enlil, this nemesis of Enki, comes and finds him in South America and takes over. He sacrifices Quetzalcoatl, and he's sacrificed as a savior for his people and for knowledge. Like he's a bringer of knowledge, just like Enki and Odin and stuff. And he was crucified and speared in the side to make sure he was dead on the 21st of December. So again, that's interesting. I mean, Jesus was put up on a cross, speared in the side. Odin was put in a hung position and stabbed with a spear. So very similar, and again, they're all connected to the story of Enki or Osiris. As the morning and evening star, Quetzalcoatl was the symbol of death and resurrection. He had a companion, I'm not going to say the name right, I guarantee, Zolti or something like that, a dog-headed god. Dog-wise, I mean, think about it, a dog-headed god, Anubis. And again, that correlates with Osiris. Osiris had a dog-headed companion. And if you go back even further, Osiris was part of Atlantis, and he was known as Enki and Atlantis, and he was a genetic creator of humans. And not only was he a genetic creator of humans, he made these hybrid like dogs and shit. And they came with him after Atlantis sunk. They went through the deserts and eventually ended up in Egypt, but his dog-headed companions were a genetic manipulation that he had created. He knew dogs were loyal. Quetzalcoatl was resurrected by magic, similar to some of these other stories, by a priestess. And this priestess has been with Quetzalcoatl, or Osiris, or Odin, whoever you want to call him, since Sumerian times. I forget her name in Sumerian, but she has been with Enki. She is basically a nurse to a doctor. She is his sidekick in all this genetic manipulation of the human genome and all that stuff. And besides Osiris, we can connect Enki to most of these people. Enki, in Sumerian times, is to be this white dude with a long beard. So Jesus, white dude, long beard. Odin, white dude, long beard. Quetzalcoatl supposedly was a white dude with a long beard because they mistaken Cortez, who came in 1519, and he had a white skin and a beard. So that's how Montezuma let his guard down. He thought, oh, this is Quetzalcoatl, and so let's not harm this guy, let's be nice to him. And Cortez took advantage of that and killed all the Aztecs and shit. The only weird thing is, something that I keep running into is the fact that Osiris can be connected to Enki, because Enki is also known as looking like a reptilian sometimes. He's said to have green skin and like an elongated head, and that's what Osiris has. And he's known as the snake in the Garden of Eden. So again, a reptilian look. So I don't know if it's like a shape-shifting thing or why, because even Quetzalcoatl is said to be, sometimes a feathered serpent. And so it makes you wonder. Same with Viracocha. Viracocha is a feathered serpent. I always thought Viracocha was a version of Thoth, because Thoth and Enki are very similar when they come to people and give them knowledge and shit. Before I get too off track, though, let's go back to the fact that, like I said, Quetzalcoatl's even closer resurrection-wise story to Jesus because of the whole getting put on an actual cross and then being stabbed with a spear on the 21st of December. That's where we even get the date. So let's get into Jesus then. I know everyone kind of knows his story, but kings were after Jesus soon as he was born. He was on the run his whole life, found secret knowledge in Egypt and Himalayas, eventually caught by Romans and executed, hung on a cross and stabbed in the side like Odin and Quetzalcoatl, came back after 3 days, died for our sins. What if Jesus isn't black and he was a white dude with a beard, just like Odin and Quetzalcoatl? What if he represented Enki just like the others, representing this being trying to help and teach humanity, but is always chased down by the antagonist Enlil, or Set, or this god you think of as the main god in the Bible, or also known as Zeus in Greek myths? Enlil has never liked Enki. Enki's always tried doing stuff for humanity, like, again, the Tower of Babel, teaching them language and stuff, giving them tools in the Garden of Eden, teaching them how to grow crops, follow stars, all this shit. Enlil doesn't like that. He wants us to be a slave race. with the Jesus story, I think they manipulated these stories into making it seem like Jesus was less. See, Odin and Quetzalcoatl, Osiris were looked at as gods. Jesus was looked at as the son of God. And not only that, they made him look like he died for our sins and all this other stuff, and they manipulated that story into kind of tricking people into this system. And system-wise, Christianity has done a good job keeping us controlled and not looking into deeper things and deeper knowledge. Give us a better understanding of who we actually are. So that's why the story keeps getting twisted, man. It's all control. I mean, even the Bible is rewritten all the time throughout a couple thousand years because, again, control. Like what better way to control a population than through their own religion, their beliefs? I want to go back. Actually, let's discuss quick too. Also, with Jesus, he came back and there was what we would consider maybe in these other stories a priestess around. And then he came back to life and all this shit. So again, this priestess is very important. There's another story of how Quetzalcoatl was sacrificed or died. And I think this goes back kind of to the Osiris story. If Osiris is Quetzalcoatl, and Osiris, when he was put back together and resurrected, if his penis was lost and they put a gold bar there, in the secret history book that I've read years ago, they said something about how that put us into a different consciousness. Our consciousness changed slightly, almost more primitive and more material-like, because now sexuality was more fake in a way, because instead of being, it's a symbolism thing. Lost a natural way of living somehow, natural way of sexuality, and him getting the gold bar in replacement of that showed a different kind of lust that humans were about to have. And so I think that somehow ties into this other story I'm about to talk about with Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl supposedly couldn't really control some of his sexual urges, and he ended up having sex with his priestess or his sister, Quetzalcoatl, or it's kind of sounds the same as Quetzalcoatl, I can't pronounce it, but she's, again, I think the priestess that was with him from the beginning as Enki and Samaria to Osiris and all that stuff. But at this point, now his sexuality had changed because he was no longer intact, his penis was gone. He supposedly had a gold bar there. I don't know if eventually the gold bar, magic-wise became something else. But I think that has something to do with him having to have sex with his sister. He finally felt this lust he'd never had before. But he was ashamed of himself. He's such a moral guy. He was so ashamed that he had the priestess set up a rock and stuff and help set himself on fire so that his spirit could go. And that's where the star thing comes from. They say he's the evening and the morning star. And so they think, when he flamed himself, his soul went back and created this star in the sky. So, what about that? So, this star in the sky, Quetzalcoatl, or this Enki, finally leaves Earth. Let's go with that story. And so when Jesus comes around, all Jesus is just this resurrection or this incarnation or reincarnation of Enki. He returns as Jesus. So, again, I'm not a Christian. I'm not saying this shit to be true, but it's an interesting theory that maybe Jesus is an actual God, not the Son of God. Again, maybe he was called the Son of God to lessen his importance because the Bible wants you to only believe in one God. So you can't say Jesus is a God because then again, we're still pagans believing in multiple gods. Finally, shows and stuff. Because I think through shows and TV and all this shit, we see this stuff. Whether it's through collective consciousness or just hearing stories like this throughout our time, or just our imagination is drawn to this subject. We see resurrections in shows. And I want to start with Jon Snow. Because he reminds me of like a Jesus figure in Game of Thrones. He's killed, for the wildlings, because they didn't fit into the controlled man population in the world, and he wanted to help them out. He basically sacrificed himself in a way. He knew he was going to probably end up dead. helping these people that he wasn't supposed to help, but he did it anyways. And again, he was stabbed. He was stabbed in the side. That was the last, blow that killed him. And priestess-wise, like I said, keep in mind the priestess thing in magic, he was brought back by a priestess using magic. And the only thing kind of different with him than some of these other stories I'm going to tell is he was scared. When he came back, he said he saw nothing. When he died, that void was there and terrified the shit out of him, and he knew it was unnatural for him to be back. So his personality changed, but in kind of a depressing kind of way, unlike some of these other characters we're going to get into. That show, Ahsoka, is actually a good example of showing where souls go after death or sacrifice, a limbo in time and space, a place within the Force, or what we know as dark matter or the ether, a place in between worlds. Sometimes people who die and are revived tell a similar story of talking to loved ones or gods or angels and are told it's not their time yet and they come back. Also, similar to a DMT trip. Me, along with other buddies of mine who've tripped on DMT, we see similar things. Like, for instance, my one good DMT trip, I shot out of my body, what you would assume is your soul. You feel like almost like a ball of energy or like an orb or something like that. And you go into a white void or this white plane, like where time doesn't exist, where matter and, physical being does not exist at all. And I could see in front of me, I think it was in front of me, everything looks in front of you. Everything is around you. Like, you can see everything. It's not like you see just out of two eyes or whatever from your peripheral vision. It's everywhere. So anyways, there's these beings, I would assume they are, because you can't see them. All you can see is the glow of eyes. So, like, you see emerald, sparkling pair of eyes, red ruby looking pair of eyes, fucking purple, yellow. I can't remember. There's like 7 beings, though. There's these 7 entities that you see. And you see all their eyes looking at you, and telepathically, because you don't have mouths, you don't have a physical body, but you can hear, feel what they're saying, and basically what they've told me and other buddies of mine, that we don't belong there. And they're kind of upset. They think you've kind of crossed a line or a boundary that you're not supposed to. And that's one reason for me, at least, the DMT trip was pretty short. I felt like they pushed me or like guided me back into my body, like they rejected me from being there. So that right there shows me that the pineal gland, it releases that DMT because it's a safeguard. It's trying to, keep you from witnessing or feeling the traumatic death that you are experiencing. And so this chemical that's released is like a safeguard. It's to help you and stuff. But at the same time, it sends you, like soul-wise, back to where you came from. I think our souls come from different constellations and from the universe and stuff. And our spirit, though, comes from Earth. So our soul, though, is our personality and all that shit. And so when it goes back, we see, this void, this almost 5th or 6th dimension of being. And we just can't comprehend it. And that's one reason we don't remember it when we come and live our lives on this 3D. Since we can't comprehend those kind of things in this kind of dimension, we're not allowed to experience that shit because it's just too much for us. It would be traumatizing as is. DMT trips are completely life-changing. Once you experience it, you realize life is fucking crazy, and heaven and stuff is a thing, but it's been made into a physical thing as a construct to keep control and comfort to humanity, Christianity-wise. But after your DMT trip, you feel yourself drop back into your body, and that's kind of how some of these people who are revived or die and then come back, they kind of feel, they pop back in their body and stuff. It's a very traumatic experience, but let's get back to the Ahsoka topic. Ahsoka comes back, to life or whatever after she's in this limbo, seeing Anakin and all this shit. She comes back, and she has a different perspective, and she seems enlightened sense of life. And I think this is symbolized by her white cloak, because afterwards you see her wearing a white robe, basically. And I think that's exactly like fucking Lord of the Rings, man. Gandalf the Grey or whatever. He dies, comes back through magic, and then he has a white robe because he's enlightened. He has a different perspective, a different sense of being. And I think that's a trial and tribulation right there, is dying and then seeing how you handle death and seeing if you can learn from that experience. And it's sometimes these people who are okay with it, they're like, yeah, I'm cool with being dead, that actually get to come back because life or the universe feels as though you've learned something and now you can look at life in a different perspective. You've earned more time on this world to experience what you need to experience and to probably help. If these enlightened beings come back like Ahsoka and Gandalf, they're here to guide and help, sacrifice themselves even more so for the sake of humanity, or light side, dark side kind of shit. Speaking of light side and dark side kind of shit, let's talk about Lost. Lost is an old show, but I still love it. You know, it's 15 years old at least now, almost 18 years old. And it's a good-ass show, man. It's got so much esoteric and occultic symbolism hidden throughout it. I don't think a lot of people realize it. But John Locke, this character in the show, he is one of these characters also that seems like he was sacrificed and then resurrected, but very differently. He tried hanging himself, was persuaded to stop, but was murdered by someone he trusted once he revealed important information, or knowledge. After John Locke dies, he returns to the island. They take his body to the island, where this man in black, if you haven't seen Lost, there's a man in black. He's kind of the main bad guy. He's kind of physical, but not physical at the same time. Sometimes he's just a pillar of smoke, and sometimes he's a dude. So anyways, this powerful entity who can manipulate himself basically takes over John Locke's physical body so that he can accomplish a physical goal of killing his brother, who had previously killed him by throwing him into the island's light, which is the energy basically of the whole world or universe. So the island is very important because of this energy that's contained there. Anyways, but killing each other over power is very similar to the Osiris story. There's a lot of Egypt references on the island on Lost too. There's even a giant Anubis statue on the island where Jacob, who in a way I think represents Osiris, and that's where he lives. He lives under this Anubis statue. And again, Anubis was a protector and companion of Osiris, just like the dog beast companion of Quetzalcoatl. Now let's get back to Lost and look how Jack also sacrificed himself, also receiving a stab wound in the same place as all these characters we have spoken of. It's interesting as well that in the show Lost, they show how Jack had been previously injured by a puncture mark in that same spot in the very first episode. And then they circled back and in the very last episode stabbed him there, you know. And also halfway through the fucking series, he had his appendix taken out, which is also on that same spot, which I noticed with Jesus and Odin and stuff, and Quetzalcoatl. These spears depicted are always in their right side, like exactly where the appendix is sometimes. So I don't know if that's some kind of symbolism about the appendix, because think about it, bro, the appendix is weird. Scientists don't even fucking understand it. It's like a live piece of dynamite that every kid is born with, and doctors just keep it in there and just hope, you know, hopefully it fucking doesn't go off someday. Like, we don't know what it does. All it does is possibly kill us eventually. So it's weird that these stab wounds are in that same spot. Same with on Lost and in these shows and stuff. Like, it's some kind of occultic or secret society imagery that we don't fully get because we don't see it. It's that third eye shit, bro. Once you open up your third eye a little bit, you see all these connections. You see how all these things are depicted in our television, our shows, and our stories since ancient times. There is an origin to all this. I don't know where it started first, but there's a reason we have all these resurrection stories